You're muted.
I think we...
Rishabh, have you started live streaming yet?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Citizen Matters Bengaluru's first event of 2023. Today's panel discussion is Lessons from Church Street. How can we revamp Bengaluru roads? I would like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists and to our moderator, Mansi Paresh Kumar. Welcome, everyone. And to all those who have joined from YouTube, our YouTube live streaming, welcome to everyone for today's session. Before we begin, I would like to just say a little bit about Citizen Matters and what we do. Citizen Matters is a civic media platform that serves as a knowledge exchange with insightful reports on critical urban issues, ideas, and solutions for cities, deep diving into issues that affect the quality of life of citizens. This includes water, commute, governance, the economy, anything that affects the daily life of citizens is something that we look deeply into. We bring together civic media, data, and diverse voices to help citizens build equitable, sustainable, and livable cities. And we also would like to empower citizens through our credible information and our in-depth reporting for them to become change makers as well. Before I hand over the session to Mansi, I would request all those who are on the YouTube live stream, please post your questions as comments in the comments box. We will take those questions up for our panelists at the end of towards the end of the panel discussion. Over to you, Mansi.
Thanks, Shravasti. It's always a pleasure to come on Citizen Matters. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our panelists. Let me just run through them. Srikanth is a very well-known face. He was a corporate trader of sorts and now has moved to politics and hoping to make a lot of difference there. Ravi Chandra is, of course, a very well-known civic warrior of Bangalore. So welcome, Ravi. Naresh is in the business of beautifying Bangalore, and we hope to have Ajit Mutana also join us for our session. So this is how we'll do this, gentlemen. I'll ask each one of you a specific question, but first, I'd like to start with a common question to all of you about Church Street. Now, just to kind of give a bit of a background, just to revise a little bit about Church Street and the project that we're discussing, this the improvisation of Church Street was first announced by the BBMP sometime in 2015, and the actual project itself got off in 2017 of February. It took about a year, which, and was formally open to the public in March of 2018. It was the first of its kind in Bangalore where cobblestones were used instead of the usual boring asphalt roads that we see around us. From a point of being very unique, it was, lauded and, it rose to grace very quickly. But there were a lot of issues also that were pointed out. 5 years on, we're trying to understand this very unique experiment with a Bangalore road. Where has it got us, and what are the lessons that we have learned from it? So my first question is to all of you gentlemen, if you can take turns. Naresh, if you can come in as the designer of the, of the entire project. Srikanth, as somebody who's had offices on that road. Ravi, as as a citizen, somebody who's just really enjoyed that street for all of what it has to offer. My first question is to all three of you. Can each one of you give me one aspect that you've truly appreciated about Church Street, what it's got right, and one thing that you think it has absolutely got wrong? So I'll begin with Srikanth. Srikanth, if you can start.
Thank you, Mansi, and good evening to all of you. I would actually go one step higher, and I'll give you two aspects on each. Right, two things I liked about the Church Street experiment, and the two things I probably did not. So, number one, in terms of what is good, in terms of the design, in terms of the rather in terms of the aesthetics, the looks, it's definitely a wonderful place. It's a pleasure to walk on that road. As a Bengaluriga, I feel proud when I walk on that road. It gives that sense that, hey, we are living in a truly world-class city types, right? In a way, it's an aspirational experiment for Bengaluru. Not that we'll be able to replicate it very quickly, but it's definitely something that we all can look forward to. And secondly, from a design perspective, Naresh says this, right? We don't ever have to dig that road up again for anything, laying of any type of cable or pipes. And I think that's a beautiful idea and a beautiful concept. Even if we can't replicate the aesthetics part of it, every road in Bengaluru should be designed and constructed in such a way that we never should be required to dig it up again. So I think these were the two things that I feel are really good about Church Street that got designed and done. In terms of what could have been done better, number one, at the time the construction was going on, it kept on going forever and ever. I understand that a project, new experiment will have its own learning curve. There'll be a lot of mistakes and there'll be a lot of things that we probably didn't anticipate, which is perfectly fine. But I think one thing that definitely could have been done is involve the stakeholders. That is the people who are living there, people who are operating out of there in their offices, people who are operating their businesses. I don't think there was any proper communication that happened as to what was being planned, what was being done, what to watch out for, why it was taking time. And generally, my philosophy is not just that project, right? Any project, it's important to have the stakeholders, and the primary stakeholders are the people who are either living there or operating out of there. It's important to take them into the whole equation. At least, if not take inputs, at least communicate with them on a regular basis. I don't think that happened. I would still give it to the team that the delays were probably inevitable given the nature of the experiment, but this could have been done better. The other aspect that could have been done better, and which we can still probably do, is to actually publicize and market the whole Church Street experiment, at least the part where you don't have to dig up the road again. If that can be set as the benchmark for all roads, that I think can serve Bengaluru's cause a lot better. So I think those are the two things that I feel worked well and didn't work well as far as the Church Street experiment goes. Back over to you, Mansi.
Thanks, Shrikant. Naresh, where do you stand on this? What do you think you got absolutely right on Church Street?
I think I'll react to it after everybody else does. I'll let the others finish talking.
Yeah, Naresh is the Vishwakarma of Church Street, so he gets to speak last.
All right, Ravi, then you take the floor. What do you think they got it right on Church Street?
To me, the main thing about Church Street, for me, I think the message that the pedestrian is the most important, the most vulnerable person on the street. The idea that streets need to be built around the pedestrian is what Church Street epitomizes. And so I think that's a great message, and a lot of people walking now, even today, in the middle of the road. What I feel is we should have gone the whole hog. That whole street should have been thought of as a pedestrian walkway. There should be no footpath, not even a 3-inch riser, nothing. And maybe for residents who live there, who have a need to take their car inside, there could be a pass, or for the restaurants and the like. We should have embraced the idea of pole and center and said, this is going to be Bangalore's first pure pedestrian street. That's where I feel that while we were ambitious, we were not ambitious enough. And what's really good about it is the fact that we have brought pedestrians center stage on that street. So that would be my short answer, Mansi. I think Mansi has a lag.
Naresh of the three.
Mansi, I think you're lagging.
Yeah, so Naresh, she asked you to respond.
I thought I'll wait for Shrikant.
Shrikant finished.
Oh, no, sorry. Okay. So, first things first. in answer to Srikanth's question, the project took exactly 1 year and 10 days for something of that nature. I think, and entire duration of the project, power, water, and sewage were functional. So most of the nuisance there was construction debris, which is inevitable. And I think for a project of that nature, less than 1 year to expect BPMP to execute is a miracle. Okay. And the second thing is, about 2 months into the project, we found out that when we tried relocating one of the reasons for the slight delay was two things. One is that we found a stormwater drain, which was below the existing stormwater drain. There was a stormwater drain where if you opened it, you could hear the sound of water, but there was no water in it. So when we broke the roof of the stormwater drain, we found a British stormwater drain, which was actually carrying all the load, which was below that for some strange reason, somebody had built a storm, and we could not find out what it was till that set it back a little bit. And the main issue which created the delay was Church Street, because VIPs go on MG Road. Church Street was being used as a service road for all the electrical infrastructure of MG Road. And all the transformers which are supposed to come on MG Road were put on Church Street. So to remove that and replace it with unitized boxes, we also removed every single old transformer which was straddling the footpath and so on. So that took a little bit of time. So in my opinion, it didn't take as much time as some other interesting projects, some flyover projects that the BPMP is doing, which ranges from time delays to about 3 to 7 years kind of thing. So I think 1 year is okay. What we got right, what people don't understand on the street is 75 to 80% of the street is what is below the ground, right? There is one Patal Bhairavi, if you want me to call it that, there's a set of demons lurking below the street. There's a fantastic image that I have, in which in a single image, when we dug it, we had sewage, water, pipelines, electricity, and the information superhighway all coiling into each other like a nest of snakes. And we were trying to, the initial idea was to relocate that on the side of the street, but it was such a mess that we actually cut it and left it behind for future archaeologists to wonder why there are so many cables below that street going nowhere. And the entire infrastructure had to be rebudgeted and redone completely from scratch. Okay. What it got right, I think you guys pointed out already, there's nothing really, and it could not be, the initial idea was to make it 100% pedestrian, but there are 42 people who live on the street, and there are 4 corporate offices, including the famous BPL Technologies, who all had car parking and who had it could not be as facilely solved by giving car passes, because lot of older people live on that road. What they said, what if my brother comes to visit? He's also 78 years old, he cannot walk. Then the office people said that people come to our offices and we cannot go around giving car passes to all and sundry who came. So the idea was to just keep the street pedestrian first. And I think even now it is that people automatically, and instead of using road humps and all that, cobblestone served as an automatic traffic calming device. The moment you speed up on cobblestone, your car makes some strange noises, and you will automatically slow down because of that. There was no way to avoid this thing, but with the help of DULT and some others, some British agency called Catapult, we managed to almost for 4 months or 5 months keep it pedestrian from on Friday afternoon till about Sunday night for almost 4 months. But after that, the program fell apart and nobody was there to champion it. Actually, I don't know why it fell apart, because it worked beautifully, at least on the weekends. And really speaking, it needs a push from the people of the city to ask for it to be at least pedestrianized from 6 p.m. to midnight on weekends, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think that itself will send a strong message of, but I think we should ask for it to be revived.
And I think, Naresh, if I remember right, you also had the other challenge in construction with a lot of eateries. Yeah. The waste and the exhaust and the oil traps and all those solutions that were required.
We had to actually force everybody to put a grease trap The earlier pipe was only 4 inches in dia, and it looked like when we broke it, we found it had atherosclerosis. The actual pipe carrying the sewage was only 1 inch, and it was all full of grease. So I've learned a lot. I mean, actually, currently I'm redoing even more complicated street than Church Street, which is VV Puram Stindibidi. Work has just started yesterday, by the way. Physical work on the ground. And there we have learned all these lessons. The other thing that went wrong, in my opinion, is that we didn't put a traffic barrier come entrance arch in the beginning. And some of the buildings on Church Street are being reconstructed. It was designed for a carrying load of 25 tons. The 25 tons was based on the fact that a fire engine would weigh between 18 and 20 tons. And each wheel obviously would only carry about 5 to 6 tons. But what happened was that the last bungalow on Church Street got demolished after we finished. And the contractor who was rebuilding it brought in a 40-ton cement mixer in the middle of the night, put it on jacks in the middle of the street, and started mixing concrete and pumping it. That disturbed the entire cobblestone and started coming out. Exactly at the same time that the maintenance contract of the cheap street ran out in one year ago, which is why you saw that spate of news items where the stones were coming out and so on and so forth. But the corporation, I raised a huge hue and cry about it, and the corporation acted quickly, fairly quickly. They acted within 3 months. They've renewed the contract now, and the problem is hopefully gone away. And they've also proposed now an arch at the entrance of the street saying, "Welcome to Church Street" on both ends. Hopefully that will get implemented in the next, I mean, I don't know if this election tamasha when, but sometime now the design is done, but hopefully it will get implemented and no more heavy traffic vehicles will be allowed. First of all, I want to distinguish that what is the difference between a street and a road? A street is a shared space. A road is focused on moving vehicular traffic with proper footpaths on the side, of course. But a street has to be the exact reverse of that. It has to be it can be a shared space between vehicles and, smaller vehicles and pedestrians. And it's acceptable to do that. It's not like either this or that kind of only pedestrian kind of thing. I don't think India is fully ready for fully pedestrian environments. Commercial Street was a classic example where there was not a single building which had parking, and it could have been pedestrianized, but the shopkeeper shot it down. And there I tried my level best. I didn't do the project in the beginning. Somebody else did it and it went haywire, and I was asked to come and rescue it. I rescued it to some extent. But if I was given the chance, I would have paved it like Ravichandra says, from end to end without a distinction between a footpath and a street. And there was no need to provide parking on the street at all. But unfortunately or fortunately, the people of India have to also, particularly of Bangalore, have to understand that this is possible. Church Street in VV Puram is going to be 100% pedestrian, 6 p.m. to midnight every day. After it is done, right? There will be no vehicles allowed. That is one of the preconditions I put there before I started fiddling with the project, and the BBMP has accepted that will be done.
One clarification. My thing on the thing that could have been done better was actually not so much the delay itself. I understand. That's why I said an experiment of this nature, given that it's been attempted for the first time, there are bound to be a lot of unanticipated things. My larger point, not just for this project,
on the communication issue, right? Can I
stakeholder engagement, right?
Yeah. So there was a continuous Facebook page throughout the entire project. There were display boards kept on the site in 2 locations throughout the project. There is also a Friends of Church Street group on Facebook where everything was posted day to day. It was also on Instagram. And there were 3 public meetings held on the street with the shopkeepers, and then with two of them with the stakeholders on the street, the shopkeepers, the office owners, and the apartment guys twice. And there was a public meeting held by the then minister, who asked for public objections or suggestions before the work even started. So I'm not very clear what you mean, but there was no public engagement because the entire street is documented on Facebook from the day 1 till day 365 when it was finished. So I'm not clear what you mean by that.
Yeah, because what happened was
The lack of perception of public engagement. It's not a lack of public engagement.
No. The reason I say this is because I was actually on that. I was on Museum Road, not exactly on Church Street, just off Church Street.
Yeah.
And we were a few officers together, about 6 or 7 officers together there. None of us actually had any clue about any of these things, and we were always surmising, guessing as to what was happening.
So there is something called the magic of social media, Srikanth. You just have to look at it. That's all.
Okay.
You didn't see it. And also, by the way, I also did Museum Road at the same time. So,
Museum Road was also in a similar.
So, gentlemen, let's just agree that there was the perception of communication was somewhere missing, as Naresh very diplomatically put it, which is quite surprising from him. But Naresh, I'd like to ask you this question. Now, Church Street became like a ground zero for experimentation, whether it was, pedestrianization or pedestrian-friendly street, reimagining how, utilities access and placement in roads with legacy problems. It became like an experiment of sorts. Realistically, how, do you really think this can be replicated? You spoke about VV Puram, you spoke about, now Gandhi Bazaar also, they're looking at doing something which we are not very clear on. Avenue Road is one of your pet projects for a very long time. That is a nightmare within a nightmare. So realistically, do you think it can be replicated?
No. First of all, that word is wrong. The problem is this kind of thing cannot be scaled and cannot be copied because the dynamics of each of these situations are very different. The people on the Avenue Road are very different. I tried doing it on Avenue Road. All I got to was, at least I got the concrete done there. That's it. And some footpath level. So the BV Puram again has its own dynamics. A temple owns about 40% of the street, right? And there are other issues there which are not as similar to what the commercial street was again extremely. So it's very, very difficult to replicate or scale this kind of thing. But the generic thing that Srikanth pointed out in the beginning, that you start with the principle that you build infrastructure to last and not to be repaired every year, and you use some annuity contracts to keep on digging the damn thing up just for in so-called maintenance. I think not just Church Street, but the whole tender sure. If you notice that the only roads that in Bangalore that do not have potholes are the tender sure roads, right? The Church Street is based on the tender sure model, which was developed by others, as you know, Jana USP and Janagraha and all these people. But refined a lot more than that. Was more a generic kind of idea, but the principle that a road has to be designed to last is fundamentally not very doesn't go very well with the existing order of how contracts are placed in Bangalore city. The contracts are placed in such a way that they favor annuity maintenance contracts, which is why when we switched over to the famous K100 drain project, which is still struggling along. If you want to know the reason for delays there, that is another session. That is also delayed by about 9 months now, 8-9 months. The reason there, what we did was we changed the nature of the contract itself to something called design, build, operate, transfer. That the contractor who does it, from the day he hands it over, is stuck in it for 5 years. The point is, if that maintenance contract goes to the maintenance department of the BBMP, that's another animal. And it's very, very difficult to deal with that animal, because in Church Street, it took me almost like 6 months of constant pressure to get that maintenance contract awarded again. It becomes another department, it becomes somebody else. So at least for 5 years, nothing happened to Church Street because we started like that. But then in K100, we are having the same issue. These, you can't really solve these. You cannot foresee more than about 70% of what the problems could be, because the damn thing is underground, and we don't have X-ray or ground penetrating radar. We actually have ground penetrating radar today in Bangalore. That 5 years ago, it wasn't there. But we do have simply no idea what is there underground unless you dig it.
So do you think that these projects will actually allow for like a transparency, understanding and collaboration of these various stakeholders, the BBMP? Finally, they also know where they are, their utilities are, because there is that ongoing joke that they themselves don't know where things are.
But Mansi, the motivation or the incentive to do that is missing because we are stuck in this. I think I'll let Srikanth talk about it. He knows a lot about annuity contracts, how the road maintenance contracts, and we have a very interesting stormwater drain maintenance contracts, which usually consists of taking out the mud every year, putting it on the side, and walking away till it rains and the mud goes back into the drain, right? So this is an old story. I don't have to get back into it, but there is the people who are in charge of such contracts have understood that there is no money to be made in maintenance of these projects at all. So there is a general reluctance to scale it across the city because you spend 5 times to 6 times as much to create that asset, but you don't have to touch it for 10 years. Tender Sure, Ravi, I think must be now, what, 8 years old now?
More than that.
More than that.
Not a
The first one is almost 10 years old.
Yeah,
12 years old. 12 years.
Except the first one, which was a bit of a mistake, and I little bit helped to fix that problem on Level Road, which was creating that flooding issue. Now that flooding issue also is gone. We managed to open that, break that rock and reset it. Nothing happens to the streets. You don't have to do white topping. You don't have to do concrete. Regular tar road, nothing will happen. If you get what is below the road right in the first place.
So Mansi, if I can just come in here.
Yes, Ravi, please go ahead.
So if you take the 4 or 5 core principles of the Tender Sure, Church Street, etc., which are broadly the following. One, to my mind, the most important is that the main customer is the pedestrian, because the society takes care of the vulnerable people, and the most vulnerable is the pedestrian. You have a road hierarchy of users, which is pedestrian, followed by cyclists, followed by the bus transport user, followed by the motorized vehicles. You try to plan in a manner that this hierarchy is maintained. The third point really is, it's the first of its kind, all these projects, including Church Street, where all the stakeholders, BWSSB, BESCOM, BBMP, and the like, it's an integrated tender, whereas Naresh said, you're planning for the longer term, and therefore everybody is planning together at one time so that you don't have to redig it. And just in terms of economics, though the initial costs are higher in these roads, the payback is around 6 years. So after 6 years, and as Naresh mentioned, I mean, the Tender Sure roads for 12 years haven't had to be retarred. There is an existing business model where the annual retarring is huge in terms of the cost. You don't realize it. So the upfront spending and subsequently not having to do downstream spending challenges the current contracting system that exists in place. So there are vested interests interested in perpetuating the current system. So therefore, that's the other thing in terms of taking a life cycle cost and doing it this way. The last question, which goes back to something you asked earlier about scalability, to my mind, I totally agree with Naresh. Each road has its own peculiarities, its own challenges, its own stakeholders. The key thing is to work with the principles, and then you customize it for each of the areas. And in the traditional, and typically if you look at Western world, they'll say there's one city center and that's the one you will pedestrianize. Bangalore, I think, has some 8-10 city centers. Whitefield has a center, Jayanagar has a center. The idea really, to my mind, what Church Street can show is across Bangalore, can we conceptually think of 1 or 2 areas in each part of Bangalore, which can then get this idea of pedestrianization, integrated development, and the like, and do it that way. Like what Naresh is doing with the food street in Vivipuram is an extension of the same idea. And similarly, there are similar streets elsewhere. So I think we would have learned good lessons if we scale it up in that manner, so that geographically, Bangalore is dotted with a set of pedestrian areas where literally the pedestrian rules, and as Naresh said, at least from 6 p.m. to midnight every day. Mansi?
Thanks, Ravi. So we've discussed a lot about what we've learned from Church Street, and it's fabulous things that happen on it. But I'd like to ask this question to Srikanth. Srikanth, Church Street, from what I could gather from all of you speaking, is a very aspirational project. It was something of a novelty. Now, scalability of something like this, having maybe not a cobblestone street, but better street across thing. Church Street cost us almost 11 crores for 712 meters. When there are peripheral areas of Bangalore which literally do not even have roads, how do we justify, how do we balance aspirational projects such as these with the basic necessities that are absolutely essential? Where do you see the lack there, and how do you see a balance that can be struck there?
So, it's a very pertinent point indeed, Mansi. The entire city, I wouldn't say just the peripheral areas, entire city is now having poor quality roads, and it's become a matter of shame at a global level where people are talking of Bengaluru's persistent pothole issues and bad roads. But then we can't just be very narrow-minded about it and say that, we will look only at setting the basic road infrastructure, right, which absolutely needs to be done. That should be the highest priority. It's a matter of shame for all of us that we live in a Silicon City, the Silicon City of India, which has such pathetic road infrastructure. So it definitely needs to be addressed. There should be a session that you should host on what ails that system and why are we not able to get our basic road infrastructure right. But then I would also argue that it can't become a bottleneck for certain things that we should look at aspirationally and certain things that we should do aspirationally. And I think the operative word that you used is balance. Striking the right balance is obviously very important. While we need to bring our focus on getting the entire road infrastructure right, we also need to look at what are all the things that we should aspire for as a city and citizens. And I think the Church Street project is definitely one that I can see as something that's worthy of emulating in our city. Right now, because of the way it's done, the tender short projects and the cost involved, obviously it's not scalable at this point of time. But if you're able to set the rest of the system right, there is no reason why over a period of time the cost cannot come down for such projects and we can't replicate it on a larger scale. It might take time, but I think the steps that are being taken today or what we did a few years back in Church Street will serve as benchmarks, will serve as those aspirational, let's say, milestones that we should be looking at for the future. So overall, I would say the way the city has to strike a balance, the government has to strike a balance, and the citizens should push for it is, I would say the priority has to be on the basic road infrastructure. And we should evolve a system where 95% of the budget should go towards setting that basic road infrastructure right. But we should also have an eye on the future and a percentage of the budget. Today, it should be a small percentage of the budget. So whether it's 5%, 10%, that's debatable. But some part of the budget is definitely worth reserving for these projects. So the question that I would like to ask is, when we talk of spending 11 crores, in absolute terms, 11 crores for whatever, 700, 800 meters might not sound great. But 11 crores, was it out of 100 crores that we spent on overall roads for Bengaluru? Or was it 1,000 crores or was it on 5,000 crores? I think that becomes the reference point. So to me, a city that spends thousands of crores on civic issues and road infrastructure, 11 crores is not an amount that I would really, worry about. All said and done, we've been spending a lot more money on statues, right? I don't think anybody seems to question that. So, 11 crores on a project like this, I don't see as an issue at all. We all need to look at it in a relative context. If you were to tell me that, we spent overall 50 crores on Bengaluru roads and 11 crores was spent on Church Street, absolutely unacceptable. But if it was 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores that was spent and 11 crores was spent on Church Street, I don't see it as a problem. So we should look at it as a two-pronged approach. The point that you made is relevant. The entire city's road infrastructure is right now pathetic, is in shambles. That needs to be set right. But we should also have an eye on the future. And the projects that, people like Naresh and others are taking up and conceptualizing, I think it's as a city and citizens, we should definitely support those. With, of course, the caveat that I would say over a period of time, if we can do it more efficiently in a more scalable manner at a much lower cost, we should evaluate it. But right now, as an experimental thing, I would fully support this.
Yes, Ravi.
Once if I can just come in.
Yes, Ravi. Yes, Ravi.
You see what places like Church Street does and now what VV Puram will do, we need some demonstration projects which shows that this is possible. Because that is what gives you hope that we can break the routine and get these kind of projects, this or the tender show. That's important. Second, the 11 crore is a misleading figure. Because when you do like to like, this 11 includes BESCOM and the BWSSB new pipes. If you do like to like, then the costs are, it is still higher, but then it also gives you a longer life. But therefore, it's slightly misleading to just look at that figure. To me, another tragedy is while we have these tender roads or the Church Street kind of pedestrianizing example, we don't carry the lesson. So, for example, if we take the white topping project, there's another principle in these roads, uniform lane. Now, in white topping, we just think that white topping is pouring concrete where asphalt used to be. We didn't use the opportunity. Forget about bringing in the new utilities, etc. That was more expensive. But at least you can clean up the lanes and follow a principle that uniform lanes end of the road will be a guiding principle. But we have again missed the plot in the entire white topping project, which is hundreds and hundreds of crores, where we could have cleaned up the lanes, maybe given even a larger footpath than they have done, and done some other planning, which is an opportunity missed. This ability to cross-pollinate learnings from one and use it elsewhere, we seem to be still operating in silos of this is this kind of project, I'll do it this way. That's a white topping project, I will use some other principles to do it, or no principles to do it. Mansi?
Naresh, you had a point to make?
First of all, what is the benchmark in deciding what is expensive or not expensive? Is it the 50 lakhs or 1 crore they spend per year, which has to be, you have to spend 50 lakhs every year for it for the next 10 years? Is that the benchmark for the price? And second thing, like Ravi pointed out, more than half the cost of that street was actually should have been assigned to MG Road, because I had to move all the infrastructure. That Church Street was the service road of MG Road. All that cost got loaded onto this project, first of all, okay? And that cost a lot. And two, initially it was supposed to just move the utilities to the side. It finally landed up creating brand new utilities from scratch. So everything was, the sewage pipe was 4 inches in dia. The water pipe for the entire thing was 50 millimeters in dia. And all that was changed to 100 mm. Then there were 36 electric cables snaking like a gorgon snake under that street. It was replaced by 2 cables on either side. All this costs money. If you do not, in a normal budget of the BBMP, the only thing that is costed is putting chip carpet on the street. That's it. So that is not going to solve the problem. So the benchmark by which you assess the cost of a road, without saying that there's no point saying 11 crores is expensive. Step one. Okay. And two, the other thing that you point out that, I think Ravi pointed out that you can't look at a street as the capex cost. You have to also look at what is called life cycle cost. That anybody in a building, I always tell them that it costs 10 times as much to maintain a built asset as it costs to build it over its life. By spending 20% to 30% more in the beginning, it will extend that life to 20 years. You can double the lifespan of the asset by just spending only 15 to 20% more than the what is the accepted capex cost. I think both these factors is what created this perception that it is expensive. Just for your information, it costs a bit more than 11 crores in the final reckoning. Okay,
I think it was about 17 crores from what I was given. No,
there was not so much, something little less than that, but about 50% or 60% of the cost was only the infrastructure of the rest of the neighborhood, not to do with Church Street. So you
I agree with you, Naresh. I mean, the utilities, the amenities, the costs were quite diverse in terms of what was being expected.
If you break it down, it's much, much different.
Granted, the life cycle costs, as you termed them. But my question is, life cycle costs are would come into play only if there is life. In Bangalore, many of the roads don't exist. There is no life to the road at all. So my question was trying to understand, how do you balance between creating a better life cycle cost as opposed to creating roads which need life at all?
Yeah, but there is a hierarchy of it. No, that's what I pointed out in the beginning. There are high throughput, like one of our other common friends like to call it high density corridors, which take like huge arterials, sub-arterials, ring roads, etc., which have to be designed for vehicular traffic primarily, right?
Correct.
One. Two, there are something called suburban roads, which are sub-arterials. Like for a classic example would be Sankey Road hitting Bellary Road, hitting the airport road. It's a sub-arterial, like a 100-feet road hitting a 80-feet road coming and connecting into Old Madras Road. It's a sub-arterial. Then there is another hierarchy which says internal layout road, main roads and whatnot. Again, there is another hierarchy which is sub-main road, like cross streets, smaller streets, and so on. And three, there are high commercial activity streets, like a street that cried out for a Church Street like makeover, not Church Street like makeover, like a hybrid makeover is 100-feet road Indiranagar, which they have completely murdered by now. It's completely not at all. They have not done it properly at all. I went and had a look at it. It's irretrievable, so I just gave up and came back. Which, for some reason, lessons learned are only learned by citizens. The government seems to learn no lesson. They just keep repeating exactly the same thing again and again and again without learning from the previous experience. I cannot understand whether there is a darker reason for it, or maybe it's just ignorance, or maybe officials get transferred and there is no knowledge transfer from one official to the other when they get abruptly transferred. It's probably a combination of all these things, but that is why we are there as the public ombudsman, to make sure that as they do it, we keep calling them out saying, please don't do that, please don't do that. We all said, don't see, to take the issue outside Church Street, take the example of Koramangala, right? I was in a meeting a few days ago trying to get that Ejipura flyover restarted. And this Ejipura flyover was a mistake in the first place to do it. And we all made a huge noise. There was a huge bunch of citizens who also thought that was the panacea to all their ills. All of them are cursing to death now because all the traffic which they thought will not go past their front yards is now only doing only that for the past 3 years. Because of that project, that has become a metro island. No metro line goes anywhere near Koramangala, not even in phase 4. And that is only because that flyover has come there in that place. There is no place for us, there is no common hybrid area for a metro station to go there at all. So we have to think mobility across all aspects. It cannot be only Church Street, it cannot be only 100-feet roads, it cannot be high density corridors. And for the shame of Bangalore is that after 35 years of pushing the suburban rail, finally somebody has released some tender day before yesterday. And the award, there is still no CEO for that company. If we do not make use of there is 184 kilometers of existing track in the city. I cannot understand why the Indian Railways treats it like an intercity track. Why can't we have an intra-city train network which goes every 15 minutes, like you get in Europe or wherever it is? With the existing track, we don't need any new suburban rail. All that can happen later. But really speaking, if you do not solve the mobility, the problem is, unless we move to a principle of moving people and not vehicles, the city's mobility problem will not get sorted out.
I see a question related to the expertise in BBMP and capacity building.
No.
And there's a question on YouTube. So clearly there's a huge challenge out there. I mean, capacity in the system is definitely quite...
There are some more
I feel the way for...
Guys, if we can just come back to the questions of YouTube a little, at the end of the thing. So we'll just come to that. Right. Ravi, the question, you've been very vociferously arguing for roads to be built around the pedestrian, and, the Church Street's experiment, the clean air street that was, devised by DULT and ISC and all of them, it was quite a huge hit for the time that it was, anchored by DULT, and then it will move to BBMP, and then we don't know what happened after that. But to get that off the road also, there was a lot of resistance from the, the residents of the area, because they were rightly so said, the weekends are the time where our people want to come and visit us, and you're telling me that, my elderly mother cannot have a vehicle inside. How do you want to deal with this kind of situation? So do you think as a community, we have still not embraced the idea of pedestrianization? And the second question that I want to ask you is, in terms of stakeholders, now, when we're doing a project like this, the stakeholders that are involved are largely the privileged class. And Church Street has a number of these hawkers and roadside vendors and all of that. How do you work towards becoming more inclusive and having their voices also heard?
Yeah. So, Mansi, I mean, clearly, hawkers, etc., these kind of roads, they have to be integrated into the entire thinking. I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, one may not do it all the time, but it has to be done. And hawkers also have right to the street like many others, and it is part of the overall streetscape. The key, I think, to my mind, is to integrate them in the street in a smart manner, and not necessarily the hawker where that becomes a block and you have to get off the footpath to walk on the road and the like. I think that's the care that you need to take in doing this. Regarding your first question, you see, inevitably, you are doing public projects. I mean, I would say Church Street and even the Food Street, etc. There is invariably some level of private pain. But if there is a larger public good that is clearly apparent, well-intentioned, and the system delivers on the larger public good, I think all of us need to make some sacrifices in terms of the private pain, because you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. So I cannot say that it is possible to do Church Street without putting the people on. I think what is important is a clear communication to the people concerned as to what is going to be the kind of working schedule, what's the overall timeline, and what is going to be the alternate path for people to come in and go out during the works going on. Our other challenge in execution, and we see that in the metro project also, our entire city is an open heart surgery. I mean, everywhere where you see the construction site, they're dangerous in the first place. And the entire place looks like that we are a city that believes in open heart surgery on scale. That is something that we need to figure a way to really barricade some of these places in a manner that is safe, clean, and also works for everybody, including the local residents, while the work is underway. Mansi?
Thanks, Ravi. We'll now move to the questions from the YouTube viewers. So one of the questions that was put to Naresh is, you spoke about social media communications that were, put in place to allow everybody to know what was happening on Church Street when the project was underway. Was there any kind of communications that came from the BBMP, any formal press release? Because not everybody actually goes through social media. It's not really the only way to do it.
I understand, but there was almost, if you look at the press coverage of that, there was about 5 people, including the minister down, was talking about it every week. There was an article every single week of the entire year. I have all of them with me. I got, across Kannada and in English. It has actually started getting covered even by, the Tamil newspaper also. Everybody was talking about it. And there may not have been a formal press release other than that formal announcement when Mr. KJ George started the project off. There was a formal announcement and a brochure handed out by the BBMP to everybody who attended, which I have a copy of, what was intended and what was to be done. There was a completely formal document, and the end of the project, there was a formal document given to all media and whoever was interested on that day, what it was done. But there was continuously, almost every single week, there were articles on it, some critical, some not so critical, some quoting the government, some quoting other people, and so on. So I'm not understanding where this perception that it was a hidden project ever came across. I thought that in fact, I thought it was over communicated, if anything. And the government was saying, yeah, sir, ishtu news barta ide project bagge and all. They were actually quite taken aback at the amount of publicity that the project got.
Well, you were creating an aspirational project, so obviously there was going to be a lot of interest in it.
It was formally released in the press as a booklet. It was continuously, the minister was giving comments on it. The MLA.
No, I think Shrikant's point was about engaging with the stakeholders and the people who are working there.
Exactly. What do you mean by stakeholders? Do you mean the?
Naresh, can I clarify that?
What is stakeholder according to you?
No, when I say stakeholder, let me just explain, right? General media coverage about a project like that is one part. I'm sure any big project will receive media coverage. And speaking for myself, I personally don't think putting out on social media is communication. The thing that I'm talking about,
the government released a 6-page document with photographs with before and a vision, and in the end of the project, they again released it with the final. What more is communication by BPM? I don't understand.
No, actually, I have a very different perspective on this. It's not just about the Church Street project. I'm talking of any project.
We are talking only about the Church Street project right now.
No. I'm just saying it obviously holds good for the Church Street project also. But I'm saying it extends to every other project that happens.
Probably. I'm not talking about anything else right now.
No, fair enough. But I'm saying this also is covered under that. Every area where a project is undertaken, there are people living there, and there are RWAs, and there are probably associations. Regular communication
No,
with
but the
them.
point, Srikanth, you're digressing from what Manasi is saying. There is an RW. There are 3 RWAs on Church Street. All of them were called into a meeting. If there are 2 shopkeeper associations on Church Street, they were called into a meeting. Nothing happens without people getting involved. Everybody has their point of view. We listen to every single person on the street. And forget that, we even called a meeting of all the Paura Karmikas and took their point of view as to what was the trash points. The level of engagement was unprecedented. I mean, I'm not understanding where is this perception coming that it was
There
not.
is no perception, Naresh. So anyway, I think we are getting into it.
Yes.
The limited point I'm making, Naresh, is I think this has to be taken not just for you, for me as a politician today who wants to bring about change. All that I'm saying is I was operating out of an office there, and there were quite a few offices that were there. We were always contemplating and guessing what was happening and what was causing the delay, or there was no communication that we for sure received.
The only correction is that maybe that information is not force-fed to everybody. You have to make a little bit of effort. All the information was available. I still have all the press releases and the document with me. I'm happy to share it with you if you want it. But there is I will not listen at all if people say that if you expect the information to be sent to you and force-fed to you by coming to your door and saying, this is what we are doing, what do you think? I think that's expecting a bit too much.
No, Naresh, I completely disagree with you on this.
All right, gentlemen, I think we will agree to disagree here. Let's agree to disagree here.
Other projects, I'm not commenting on other projects.
I will just put in one last word on this. There are projects where we are part of WhatsApp groups where there's nothing that needs to be force-fed. A simple WhatsApp group of people living in that locality and just passing communication on a regular basis actually solves a good part of it. It
was done exactly like that. Why do you think it got over?
Okay, Naresh. Srikanth, I just want to say for the record, in the respect of Church Street, I have been in meetings with the RWs and the Traders Association and the like. It happened. They were physical meetings. I do not know about the WhatsApp group, but the physical meetings did happen.
Also.
Okay.
And we were not part of it despite staying there. So that's all.
So Naresh, just to kind of, step in here because, we're not going anywhere with this. So if there was a 5-point communication, plan to put in place for stakeholders, for, press, for public, who are the people you would engage with? You engage with Paura Karmikas. Who were the other people you engaged with?
Including people on the street. I talked to a lot of the youth there. We did a series of I did a huge perception survey for almost 20 days, 3 weeks continuous.
Is this something that you're replicating on Vivipuram then?
Absolutely. It has taken, everybody has been spoken to. They've gone and stood there almost 2 weeks continuously every night. We went and spoke to the temple there. Every single, the Vivipuram is a completely different animal. It has 40 food shops on the bottom, and the entire upstairs is full of PGs. There is another life there. It's a PG paradise on top, and there are a lot of little offices there. So the whole makeup is completely different. Everybody has been spoken to. The politicians have been engaged with, the corporator and the ex-corporator. In India, the ex-corporator and the ex-MLA is only the heir apparent. If you don't talk to the ex guy, you're in trouble. So we spoke to the ex guy, the the current guy who is no longer there, but the guy who was there before this thing. Everybody has to be brought on board. Projects like this will happen when there is a confluence of money, confluence of budgets, confluence of politics, confluence of bureaucracy, confluence of engineering, and confluence of the people. When all these five become a confluence, forget Ganga Saraswati, you need Ganga Saraswati, Yamuna, Narmada, and Kaveri to come together to make something like that happen. And then it is like you sharpen the knife for 1 year before you cut it with it. And the day you cut it, everybody's on board. Now we have no objection at all. We've spent 4 months doing the prep before we touched it, right? And that's enough. That's only 250 meters, by the way, VV Puram. Okay, and
yes,
people have understood that, and now everybody has understood why we are doing what we are doing. And with a lot of visuals, people don't understand drawings, but they understand before and after. VCB, they call it. What you see is what you get. And today with 3D imaging technology, VR technology, drone technology, you name it, everything has been deployed to explain to the most technologically illiterate person there what we are going to do. And this already started coming in the media now, what is going to happen. And there are a lot of people already passing loose comments on it, saying we have destroyed another Bangalore asset. There is nothing to destroy there. It's already fully broken. All I'm doing is fixing it. I don't understand why people go haywire. If you do things, I mean, the classic example of how not to do it is Gandhi Bazaar, where there is an overriding, some foreign funding, a bunch of people, well-intentioned government people get together and propose a plan and don't talk to anybody on the street. The moment you went to do it, everybody came and said, stop it. Right? So this is not the way.
So why was your way of engaging with stakeholders not replicated in Gandhi Bazaar? Was there no conversation between you and Dal?
No, nobody asked me. Nobody asked me how to do it. And I've done it now twice already. Commercial Street was falling apart because somebody else took it over and murdered it. I brought it back, and within 2 months, within the 3rd month, I opened it and there was no flooding, no problem. Everything got fixed. In 3 months after I got all the shopkeepers together and said, guys, if you get in the way, it's not going to happen. If you work with us, we'll make it happen. And everybody came on board, and everybody came. Before that, nobody spoke to them, which is why it was the whole thing was falling apart. So the government does not easily engage with the private initiatives, and they are particularly suspicious if it is pro bono. I don't charge any money for anything I do, right? Everything is a public good, or rather, I would call it in the public interest. They cannot understand the motivation of somebody like this completely. And what they do is, once they have the idea, they tend to keep you out of the loop when it comes to decision making in that. It's all part of the learning curve. I'm sure Srikanth is now entering the BBMP politics. It's a minefield out there. I can sit with you separately and tell you how to negotiate. I know how to negotiate the entire BBMP backwards. So please sit with me separately. I can tell you dark stories, bright stories.
Okay, let's not go there. Let's stick to the brighter side of lessons learned from Church Street.
The thing to learn is you have to understand also and be very clever to recognize when the confluence will happen. If all these 5 aspects don't collide and become one stream of alignment, the project will fail. It will not, whatever you do, it will fail. Everything else, the ideas may be right, the money may be there, the intent may be right. But if you don't bring everybody on board and understand that it's not what you think is right, like if Ravi pointed out saying, why is it not pedestrian completely? Even you have the right to think so. But if the people on the street say, no, we don't want it like that, and if you keep saying, no, either this or bust, your project will be bust only. Even on VV Puram, throughout the day, there is traffic on the street. It is a link road between two, Sajanrao Circle and the other side.
Lalbagh Road.
If you cut it completely during the day, the entire PG crowd of that area will descend on you and murder you. They will stop you instantly because there is a lot of things, vehicles going in and out. There are service vehicles coming inside. So let us not just blindly copy some European or some Copenhagen or Paris or something examples. What you need is a solution by India, for India, by Indians. That is the principle of a democracy. And I think that should be replicated in all street design.
Given that you're talking about murder, I think this might be a dangerous question because you already said, why don't we do something Indian? Now, cobblestones are something of a phenomena in European countries. I mean, we see them all over the place. Is it something that is, advisable for Indian streets? I mean, are there better alternatives? Because, you personally were involved with Church Street, but if the BBMP couldn't even manage it after a point. So
Church I would not recommend it if heavy vehicles are allowed to ply on it, and definitely
even for pedestrians, Naresh.
Yeah, but how is it that all the Indians who go to Europe in Paris and Rome and Copenhagen walk on cobblestones with high heels and nothing happens, and something happens only in Bangalore city? That is not the answer at all.
No, that's different. I'm asking, are there other alternatives which can be
lots of alternatives?
Which can be actually implemented by the BBMP, which does not seem to have the expertise in this?
In commercial street, it is just concrete, because most of the time you can't see the street at all there. There are so many people and vehicles. It's just plain concrete, and the footpaths are all granite. What you need to do is you should not have something like a paver block, because paver block is set in sand. If for any reason one or two is removed for maintenance or anything like that, the whole thing comes apart like a jigsaw puzzle. So you need what are called interlock paver blocks, which are 9 inches deep, which cannot, even if you remove a couple, it should not come out. These are all learning things that we learn. In BV Puram, we are now assessing whether to do it with interlock pavers, not granite. Because granite cannot be made to interlock very easily, and if you increase the thickness of granite paver blocks beyond a point, the cost becomes unsustainable. Right? It's not justifiable. So the question there is, now what we're trying to do is we are working with this organization called Pothole Raja. I don't know whether you've heard of them.
Yes.
They have developed a very interesting product, which is a honeycomb of recycled polypropylene, in which you fill in concrete. And that acts as a bridging layer, even though there may be unsettlement below. It won't create it won't allow a pothole to be made there at all. So it's an experiment we're going to try there. They're doing it as we speak now. They're putting it up there. We're going to run endless vehicles on it for about 2 months, 1 or 2 months, as the rest of the infrastructure is done, to see how that lasts.
But do these meet the IRC standards of motorized roads?
They've got all the test certificates and all that stuff. That is not a problem. By the way, cobblestones are also part of MOST standards. Okay, there is a standard for that also, but it does not allow. It has to be treated as a street. It cannot become a through traffic road where cement mixers and giant trucks carrying sand weighing 30-40 tons are allowed to go and stand there and unload and brake on the street suddenly. It will not. Nowhere in the world that is allowed to. In these kind of areas, typically where these kind of things are used, heavy traffic is simply not permitted. Even if you want to build a house, you bring a chota concrete mixer and you mix concrete if you want a supply. You cannot bring these 40-ton trucks into that place. If you want to bring that, put concrete and be happy. Don't try all these experiments.
Right. Ravi, you spoke about, every area having a city center in Bangalore. Is there a way that, an average citizen can actually push for, pedestrianized streets or aspirational projects? Naresh, where do you think they should start with? They should start with the ex-MLA or the current MLA? Or which one do you think we should be talking to?
A list of 42 locations in Bangalore where it could be done. Okay. When we finished Church Street, everybody got so happy they said replicate it. So I have a list of 42 locations where this could be done, either only pedestrian or pedestrian oriented. I won't call it only pedestrian, hybrid, as well as fully pedestrian. Commercial Street, I was pushing for fully pedestrian. That didn't work. Gandhi Bazaar again, which is a hybrid model, which was focused only on pedestrianization. That was a mistake. I think people have also realized now, and they're asking for suggestions how to get that thing going again.
But Gandhi Bazaar is also a bus route, Naresh.
I know.
It wouldn't be a...
I know. So you need a hybrid there, just like 100 feet road in India. So we've got now about I mean, I don't want to say it before it comes. I'm working on another 3 or 4 as we speak. You will see it soon. Now with the elections coming, I don't know how much all this will get delayed. Another 3 or 4 have been green lighted by the government. Now we are working on that. And let us see, there are almost every neighborhood has a street like this. I've got a list of 42.
And I think Jayanagar also has one happening. Ravi, you wanted to come in on this.
Yeah.
No, to your earlier question, see, in each of these areas, the power structure is different. So one, of course, the Resident Welfare Association, people need to come and put pressure. But you again have to smartly understand the overall ecosystem there, because you asked about ex-MLA, current MLA, etc. You got to understand who can make it happen. And you got to work with them to make it happen. And as Naresh said, those 4 or 5 things, the stars have to align. So you have to be driven by that pragmatism, that how a well-intentioned outcome can be made to happen. And sometimes you have to sup with the devil, or often you have to sup with the devil to make it happen. And you have to be ready for that. You cannot be moralistic out here.
Shrikant, they're calling you.
Outcome is desirable.
Shrikant,
if you want me to put it more pithily,
no.
I have to serve the very powers that I criticize in the mornings. I criticize them on Twitter in the mornings, and in the afternoon I have to have project meetings and I have discussed global warming and world peace. So I live in what is called a perpetual conflict of interest. And if you take the perpetual conflict of interest as the beginning of a creative paradox, the solution will start to arrive. And
well, both of you very kindly called Shrikant the devil, given that he's moving into politics now.
No. It's a perpetual conflict of interest for me and people like Ravichandran, and to a large extent even to Shrikant, because you cannot go on. There's a whole bunch of clicktivists and slacktivists, and I get every morning I wake up, there's an entire bunch of forwards on my phone criticizing everything that is going wrong with the city. And I'm sure there's lots going on in the city, but there's not a single, I wouldn't say single, there are very few people who say what is the alternative, what can be done, how can it be done? And everybody's question is, I saw it on your YouTube chat also, what does the average citizen? None of you are average citizens. Each of you own the city. Please don't call yourself an average. I'm also an average citizen only by that benchmark. All I do is sit and think about what to do, find a place, and then take endless patience. Takes 3, 4, 5 years. You pointed out Church Street was originally thought of when I saw something like this in Paris in 2013. It took till 2015 to become a physical idea that could be floated. Then it took 2 years of homework to push it through the system. And then once it went into the system, it took 1 year to execute it. So I think you have to have a long range 3, 4 year vision, staying power, and go after it, and then assemble resources and stakeholders around you. See, in India, the problem is stakeholders in India come at you with the pointy end of the stake pointed at you. That is what is a stakeholder.
Okay, gentlemen, the last question.
You have to know how not to react. You have to know how to be calm. You have to know how to balance sometimes completely conflicting ideologies, and then create a world of compromise and control that no one party is in complete command of. And if you're okay with such a perpetual conflict of interest situation, and you're able to, Einstein or somebody said, the mark of an intelligent person is to be able to hold 2 completely opposing ideas in your head at the same time. And here I have to do 7 at the same time. So you have to use emotional intelligence. Mere intelligence won't do, mere technical thing won't do. And you have to also be decisive at certain times and say, no, I'm going to do this. And this is the right thing to do, and find a way to convince people. If you're able to do that, you will fail 9 times out of 10. I used to fail 9 times out of 30. Now I fail 9 times out of 10. Okay, that's the learning.
That's the average that you. So, Shrikant,
currently Kevin McCarthy has failed 11 times out of 10. So,
so the last question I have, Shrikant, if you can take this, and then Ravi, of course, Ravi and Naresh, you can come in. To have capacity building within BBMP, so there is some kind of knowledge transfer when people get transferred and they don't take the files and the knowledge with them. What do you guys think can be done? Shrikant, can you kind of, would you have an idea of what you'd like to do in these very
Can
dusty
I just
halls.
Can I just interrupt 1 minute before Srikanth answers? The word urban design, okay, has got embedded in BBM. Okay, this is how you do it. You have to introduce technology, jargon, the way in which people think of it. The word urban design is now part of BBMP. I think that's the greatest win for me in the last 5 years. And also to be able to think differently in terms of pedestrian oriented. These are all words which they don't know. And the knowledge transfer begins with starting and like citizen participation. Now you have ward committees running in Bangalore, right? That took what, 20 years of terrific effort by a whole bunch of people. At least there is a semblance of a ward committee tamasha going on in Bangalore. There are ward committees. I went to 2 or 3 of my own ward committees. All right. It's not the perfect thing, but it's a start. And we'll see.
Srikanth.
So, yeah, coming into this, I personally don't think there's any kind of a knowledge transfer that is needed within the BBMP system. One point that Naresh said, I agree with, knowledge embedding is actually needed, but that's at a larger level. I think the bigger problem today, Mansi, is, or rather there are two main problems that I see at the local level when it comes to execution of projects and implementation. Number one, as you said, there are too many people with different vested interests and agendas and so on. It's a larger systemic problem where there is no clear accountability pegged, or there's no clear responsibility or authority given. So that's a problem that we'll have to live with for now. We will anyway look at fighting that problem. But even within those constraints and even within that framework that we are working in, the bigger issue that we see is we just need, for the lack of a better word, political will and political intent. If there are people at a local level who are interested in doing work, and if there are citizens, that is local officials, who are interested in doing work, and if there are citizens who are willing to support, which is happening in quite a few areas, there is actually a lot that can be done. There is no rocket science that we are trying to learn here. Speaking for myself, on many things which I had absolutely zero knowledge about a few years back, I have managed to develop some understanding, and I don't need to become the expert to actually implement or execute. So if you're going to implement a Church Street style project in, let's say, one of the peripheral areas as the city center in that area, all we need to do is to tap into the existing project, the expertise and the people that are there. And if we have the intent to do it, it can get executed. So to me, the issue is not so much about knowledge transfer as much as it is about intent. So I firmly believe in areas where we can have good people, elected representatives and officials working along with citizens. There is a lot that is possible at a small scale. We have already tried out a few things in a few areas. I can even take the example of a skywalk that we got completed right in front of my home. It took all of just 2 months. I am no expert in skywalks, and it didn't need experts in skywalks to actually get it done. So all it needed was a nodal officer with intent, citizens with intent working together to get it done. Knowledge transfer is something absolutely not needed. The knowledge already exists, whether it's with consultants and architects who are there, who can offer it. There are enough contractors who can do it. That's all that is needed to get things done. And this is true whether it's an aspirational project or a basic project.
I think you guys are downplaying it quite a bit, because it's not as easy as you guys are making it sound. But yeah, Ravi, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
No, so basically, you see, I mean, there are competency issues, capacity issues, all that is there. But I would agree with Srikanth. See, the way forward, and if you see the examples of Tender Church Street and the like, the public and private coming together, figuring out what needs to be done and working together is really the way forward. In fact, it's my great belief that we really need people from private sector taking some 3 to 5 years sabbatical and going and working in BBMP. People in BBMP and others taking sabbatical and going and working in the private sector. We need more osmosis and cross-pollination to happen as part of the way forward. Because I really think that the problem is too complex to expect any one particular department, particularly the BBMP, to fix many of these issues. But if they come together, the knowledge is available in the system. It's a question of then deciding, okay, it's available here, let's use that know-how and use it. But it will work if we come together. If we work in silos, which is the traditional model, If we work in an opaque manner, which is again the traditional model, then we will keep repeating the same mistakes.
Naresh, any final comments from you before I thank all of you for giving us so much time?
I think I spoke enough now, but I have to drop off the call. But I would appreciate that whoever is listening to the call, start looking at some area in your neighborhood where you can make a change. And I'm happy to come and tell you how to get it going. But really speaking, just about 2-3 of us doing this in the city is not going to make any dramatic difference. And I do wish a lot of luck to Srikanth and his fledgling party. I hope some of you at least get into the BBMP and understand the Augean stables that it is. So we're all looking for the Hercules to come and fix Bangalore, but let's see. I mean, I hope. But what is positive is that now there is enough visibility in the system that the people of the city are starting to, even using the word Church Street model is a knowledge embedding within the BBMP, right? So I like that. So people are starting to ask for something like this. Earlier, there was not even a demand to do something like this. And I think it's a good, slowly but surely, I think Bangalore shall overcome one day. Let's see.
Right. Thank you, all three of you, for being part of this. It's always a pleasure to have all three of you talking on a very important aspect of urban problems of Bangalore. Good evening and have a great weekend. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.